So research basics, track this sheet. We're going to start out talking about what is evidence. Evidence is published support of an argument. Published support of an argument. So evidence is how we're going to actually make our case in a debate round. You can't just get up and say, I think that illegal drugs ought to be treated as a matter of public health, therefore it should be. Like, you have to have somebody else who thinks that's a good idea as well. So it's support of the arguments that you're making. And all the individual arguments that you make that try to support the resolution are going to be supported with evidence. And all those things are going to be little pieces of this puzzle. So maybe it's because criminal justice system doesn't actually prevent people from becoming addicted. Maybe the criminal justice system causes lots of deaths unnecessarily, all these sorts of things. And those are all going to be supported with evidence. And evidence helps to persuade an audience. Because an audience is going to be a lot more willing to say that, oh, this expert, this person who's been researching drug policy for years and years says it, rather than just saying, well, Ricky said it. Because, well, Ricky's a really smart guy. Ricky's probably not the most credible person this judge has ever heard of in their lives. So that's what evidence is. Why is good evidence important? Good evidence is important because it gives credibility to your words. It gives credibility to your words. So just like we said that Ricky is not going to automatically be credible just because he stands up and says something, or anybody else is going to be credible just because they stand up and say something. In the same way, when we're in a debate round, we have to find people who support the things we say. And so we get credibility. We get somebody who actually supports it. It's the same as if you're a football team made up of a bunch of 4-foot-tall guys and going against a team of NFL players, you're probably not going to be scary. But if you suddenly walk in with a team of really big guys, people think you're a legitimate football team. When you have all these really smart people who say, do what Ricky says, then suddenly the judge and other people in the room are going to say, well, what he's talking about is more credible. So how do we find evidence? We research. Research is finding information that supports your position. Finding information that supports your position. So the entire process of research, we're trying to, one, build a knowledge base, just to know what we're actually talking about in these debates. But then secondly is to try to support the arguments that we're going to make, because obviously we want to be able to say, here's what I think, and here's who supports me in saying that. So that's the goal of finding evidence. We're trying to find information that is going to support the case that we are trying to argue. So any questions on that? Okay, let's talk about the research steps. There are 3 basic steps in the research process, and these steps get repeated over and over and over again. You're never really done researching. You just kind of have to stop at some point, typically because the tournament's about to start. So the first step is to brainstorm keywords from the resolution. So this asks us first, what do we already know? What do we already know? So before you've read anything, you look at the resolution and you say, what do I already know about this resolution? What do I know? What does abuse of illegal drugs look like? What is public health? What is criminal justice? Well, criminal justice is throwing people in jail. You don't have to have done a day's worth of research in your life to know that criminal justice is throwing people in jail. Now, what an illegal drug is, you might have a general idea about what it is, but then the research is going to flesh that out even more. So the first thing you do is figure out what you already know. The second thing you're going to do is ask what words are unclear to you. So maybe the word abuse is not a clear word. We aren't sure what the word abuse means. And so then we're going to try to think about that as we're researching. So the third thing you're going to ask is, what do I need more information about? Is there something that doesn't make sense to me? So maybe we don't know exactly what all the illegal drugs are that we're going to be thinking about researching. And so when we start thinking about like prescription drugs and other things that are maybe beyond what the basic illegal drugs we would start thinking about. So that's where we go with that. The next thing we do is begin answering the questions. First thing you want to do is find definitions. Find definitions. And we've done some of this already. But if we were trying to think about what illegal drugs are, then we might want to actually have a list. And so this would include things like marijuana and heroin and methamphetamines, all these sorts of things that are illegal drugs, and we would want to know what the list includes. And then we can begin looking for information to educate ourselves. And this just entails reading lots of different articles. And so some of the articles that we've already read in class or that we've taken home and read are those kind of articles. What are the things that we can look at that help us understand the contours of this resolution? Where is this resolution wanting us to go? Then the next thing you should do, the third step, is to dig deeper. This means reading the articles. Find good quotations. Find good quotations. So the quotations are the way you're actually support your arguments in the debate round. And so you're finding these good quotations that you're going to use in a debate round. And then the third thing you do is you use that article that you have, or the articles that you have, to point you to other good articles and to other good quotations. And so what often happens at the end of every paper, you have the bibliography down here, and these are all the different places that that paper's author went to try to figure out information. And all of those resources can be really helpful as you're trying to dig deeper into the topic. And at the end of the day, you're just repeating this process over again. And so as you read an article, you're brainstorming and trying to think up what are the other things that I could research. And then you start answering the questions that you have as you read additional articles. And then you keep digging deeper. And this is what the research process looks like. And like I said, it's really never done. So how do we use Google? It's real simple. We can search with individual terms. So we can put in the words drug abuse. Or we could search multiple words. So we could say illegal drug abuse and public health. And so this has a lot of the words from the resolution, and just see what comes up. One really key thing to remember with Google is how the Google software actually works. And so if you put in a string of words, then it's going to go out to the internet and try to find places where all of those words appear individually. If, however, you use quotation marks, as we have in the very last set, search using quotation marks. So if we put criminal justice, the two words together, in quotation marks, or public health together in quotation marks, or illegal drugs in quotation marks, then Google will only go out and find websites where those two words are used in that order. And so that's a really good way to start narrowing the searches that you have. And so as we go through this research process, and we're going to Google all the time, we want to try to figure out how do we dig into each of these topics. And so we're going to start reading articles, try to find keywords from the articles, and when we have those keywords in the articles, we're going to use those to come up with bigger and broader ideas that we want to keep researching to ultimately find these quotations that we can use in the debate round to help us win the round. So that's how we're going to find the evidence and how we're going to use it in the debate round to actually win.